Alright, so we are going to be doing the oil pan. This is going to be all sorts of fun. So we're going to need to take off this. So it's going to be a few 10 millimeters. We're going to have to take off the clip. So it's going to be 110. One fastener right there. One right there. One right there. One right there. And then there's going to be 110 right there. That should be it. Then we're going to take off the exhaust. Put some penetrating oil. Let it sit for about an hour or two. Keep re-soaking for once every 30 minutes or 20 minutes, however you want. The more consistent you are with the penetrating, the more faster it's going to penetrate the bolts. So make sure you penetrate those before. Because as for this guy, this bolt's kind of damaged. You see that? Has a nice gap to it. So praying that's not going to be a problem. But yeah, all sorts of funs and goodies now. So we're going to go ahead and attack this job. These are going to be all 14 millimeter bolts on the exhaust that we're taking off. Now if they come out with the stud, don't worry, you can put it back in. It's not the end of the world. Alright, so I got the bolts off. Probably gonna have to weld a nut onto that and get that out, so won't be able to use that guy for a while. So in the meantime, oh, and I forgot to mention, we gotta take off these bolts that are right there. They're gonna be 315. So let's see, so it's gonna be one right there. I think I'm gonna have to deal with the same problem on that bolt too, because I can see the space on that. So, all sorts of fun stuff on this car. Now I'm going to go ahead and just take off this bracket just to speed up the process. That's going to be a 12 millimeter. So at this point we're going to go ahead and drain the oil. The reason why I didn't drain it in the beginning because I wanted to see if the oil pan was cracked and see if it was actually leaking. So I left it overnight just to make sure none of that was leaking. And you're going to use a 17 millimeter just to take off that bolt. So the two bolts that I took off are 12 millimeters. So now at this point, we're pretty much ready to start attacking the oil pan. So we're going to go ahead and lift it up from the transmission. Take off some of the subframe bolts on this side, so we can at least get some clearance. So we're going to go ahead and take off these two 17 millimeter bolts. We're going to take off this bolt and this bolt, and then we're gonna have our jack stand right here, or a jack right here on the transmission, so we can lift it up, and then we can sneak out the oil pan. If needed, I think you might need to take off one of these guys and unscrew that bolt, but not all the way. Okay, so now I went ahead and lifted up the transmission. So I'm going to see if I have enough clearance to take this off. If not, because I think I might have to take off the motor mounts. This one's not giving me as much clearance as I need. So I only probably just need to take off probably 2 motor mounts or 1. So we'll see how this goes. So hopefully I don't have to take those off. But for the most part, we're going to go ahead and take off all the 10mm bolts that are on the oil pan. And the way how we're going to get to these guys is you're going to need a wrench. And those ones are going to do manually unless you take off the belt. And then those are going to be 14ths. So these 2 will take off these. And then there's going to be a 10mm. And I believe there might be one more 10mm under this cover. We'll find out. And then we're going to take off this 10. So we're going to have to do all of that. And to pretty much to get to these bolts, I'm going to be using a 1/4" ratchet with a 10mm just to get to these bolts. Alright, so in order to get to the few bolts, if you want to make it easier, you don't have to do this method, but I would like you to do it. So you're going to need to take off this motor mount bolt, which is a 17mm. You're going to need to take off this power steering reservoir. So you just pull back and lift this guy right up, and you'll have access. At the same time, you will need a lift from the oil pan. And have some wood so you protect the oil pan. And then you're going to lift right here. So as you lift up, the bolt will come out pretty easy. Then you're going to about to cut a wood about this big. This is a 2x4. I want to say about 2 inches. So you're going to cut a length of 2 to 3 inches. And just set it right there. So 2 inches will be good. And then you're going to lift it up. And then this guy should be able to sit on that motor mount. And then you'll lower the jack. And yeah, that works out. And that gives me enough space just for that. And I think I'll be able to sneak out the oil pan a lot more easier now. These bolts right here you can get with a ratcheting wrench. That's what I'm using. You can use a regular wrench. I think the only probably trouble that you're going to have is when setting back the oil pan. You can take off the belt, but I'm not taking it off. I think my method works out pretty well. And then from the bolt right here on this side, you can actually access it from under the car from the other side. So what I did was, to get the oil pan out, I basically pried between this bolt, and I pushed down, from here to the oil pan, and that's what popped it off. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and clean up our area. We're going to use a box blade to clean all this up. Then we're going to have two mating surfaces. Well, obviously this is going to be all siliconed. There's no gasket for it. But yeah, we're going to have to clean up all this mating surface with the wire brush and a blade. I'm going to go ahead and clean this guy up, and then I'll get right back to the video for the install. Alright, so I got the oil pan cleaned up. All nice. Looking brand new. So basically the tools that I use to clean up is the wire brush. It's not that thick. So it's about the size of my finger. I want to say like almost half an inch. And then this helps out too. If you don't have this, is no biggie. You don't really need it, but if you do, it's like kind of like a plus side. And then you're gonna use the box blade first, just to take off all the big silicone buildup, and you'll come over with the wire brush just to take off the thin coat or whatever leftover silicones on there. And then same thing for here. Got that all nice cleaned up. Before you put on the oil pan, make sure you go over the car with brake cleaner. So even though you already wiped it down with brake cleaner, I would recommend you going over it, just as the silicone will stick better and seal better. Because if you don't do that, then you'll have an issue. So I'm gonna go ahead and you can either do two ways. You can either apply the silicone to the block itself or to the oil pan. I feel like if you apply the silicone to the block, you'll have a less mess, as versus like it catching on right here or something like that. But I think I can do it without. I would kind of do like a test fit first before putting on the oil pan, just to see how the oil pan would go, and then you would kind of see your technique. So I'm going to do that first before I do that, because I'm going to see which are my contacting points. I might hit this with the oil pan, so I don't want to be knocking off silicone off that. Alright, so if I want the oil pan just to sit perfect without it hitting anything, I would need to lift up the motor a little bit, but I think that's as high as it can go without doing any more further work onto it. So I'm going to clean this up a little bit, and I'm going to end up putting the silicone on this. So I'm going to end up just following the lines and applying the silicone just how it is all around. And I think I'm actually going to apply it this way for the most part, and then once I get on the other side, I'll apply it over here. I mean, just the way how I'm laying, so my head's over here on the back side of the motor. But yeah, I think we're going to go ahead and do that. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and take off this weld, or this exhaust bolt. Got to weld the nut on there, so that's going to be all fun games right there. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and apply our silicone. I'm using actually Toyota's FIPG. You can use Honda Bond or any type of silicone that you prefer, that you think that works best. The Toyota FIPG actually works pretty great, and so does the Honda Bond too as well. It's just I don't have any Honda Bond, and either or I'm still happy with the product. So you're going to want to cut to this second line. Now we're going to go ahead and clean up our surface before putting on the silicone. Now I'm doing this with brake cleaner. Now this is the most crucial part. So here's kind of the final result. You kind of want to make sure you want to go around each bolt hole. I know some of you are going to be like, well, that's too much, but I'd rather be a little bit safe than sorry. So I'm going to go over this bolt hole that's right there. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it. You want to try to do this as fast as possible. Now we're going to go ahead and put on our oil pan. So these guys you're going to kind of screw in last. I thought I was recording, but the camera fell. Alright, so I pretty much got all the bolts tied in. I don't know when the video stopped recording. I gotta double check on that. But for the most part, this bolt, I only used the wrench for the ratcheting wrench, just that bolt. And then for the rest of these bolts, so 1, 2, 3, and then, well, these bolts I used this ratcheting wrench, and then same thing for this other bolt right here. This will be the 5th one because this is the 4th. So the 5th bolt right here, I went on the other side with my other hand, just holding it right there, and then I put in my hand through here, just holding the ratchet. So sorry I didn't show that. Thought I could have. I didn't notice that the camera stopped recording. Then you can either thread these. Now these you guys will tighten last. I'm gonna go ahead and double check all my bolts to make sure none got loose. But these guys should go in nice and smooth. If they don't, you need to double check something. Because if you tighten these before you tighten those, then you'll have an oil leak problem. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten those. I'm gonna double check my work, and then I'll go ahead and record the other process of putting up the manifold. Oh, also before we start putting everything back together, you need to let the oil pan gasket seal for about 2 hours. So it kind of at least, hardens up depending on the climate. So, I mean, we're in California, so it's not that bad. And I'm in the garage, so I'm going to let it sit overnight before I add oil. The longer you let it sit, the longer it's going to last. So just keep that in mind. Alright, also, for all the exhaust bolts, I'm going to be putting NICs. So just all the threads, just put NICs so that they last longer and then that the bolts don't seize on them. So we're going to go ahead and lift it up until we have enough space up on top. So by guiding the jack, you're going to go ahead and lower it as needed. So I'll lower it right there. This guy moves, so it might not help out for you guys, but I'm going to have to replace that mount eventually. Then we're going to go ahead and put the power steering reservoir back in. So make sure that those two little notches get right in and that clips in. Yeah, I mean, pretty much that's it. We'll go ahead and just lower the jack. Double check your work. Make sure you've gone through everything. I'm going to go wash the skid plate, but I will wash that tomorrow. It's kind of getting late right now. Don't want to upset the neighbors. Add your oil, put on your oil filter, and then put back on your wheel. I did forget to mention that you're supposed to take off the wheel. I think they're either 19 or 21s. This one had aftermarket rims. But if this video helped you out, thumbs up, comment below, and then hit that subscribe button for more upcoming videos in the future. And thanks for watching.